This is the Kyle Malnati Show. Our podcast provides an opportunity to expand your knowledge, and it's our goal to make real estate investing more approachable to everyone. Each episode, we tap into the mindset of real estate experts and share their stories. Live from Denver's Cherry Creek neighborhood, you are watching the Kyle Malnati Show on YouTube. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and we are broadcasting from the office of Tom Conkle at Stewart Title. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have Cory Phillips on the show. Cory's a great friend and a client. Cory, in 2012, bought a 33-unit apartment building called the Booker T. Washington, and then in 2015, sold a property, an 8-unit, right here at Stewart Title with our team. So Cory, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Cory, what's your real estate story? How did you get involved in real estate investing, and kind of where did that all start?
So out of college, I started at a bank, a small bank, and kind of moved into, after a few years of managing a small team of residential lenders, I moved into a startup bank out of Broomfield, and really through the 3 years that I was there, I was running some of the commercial credits, working with a lot of real estate guys, and working with those guys for 3+ years, you begin to understand their story.
Yeah.
And see how they work from start to finish. You really see the initial credit request all the way through, the tax returns to the purchase, and then the long-term loans after that.
Yeah, the banking industry is an amazing industry where you get the ability to sit kind of on the sideline. You're a participant in the real estate transaction, but you get to watch it and see how real estate investors approach it. And then you're obviously making sure that the property is going to cash flow. And one of my first experiences in real estate was working at a bank and seeing how the process of the dollar went from the teller line all the way through the loan department.
Sure.
So it's a wonderful way to learn.
It is, and during that time, I met a lot of great people, saw a lot of great loans, and I met one guy in particular that really intrigued me because he was a young guy and he was doing great things in real estate. He was a Wall Street guy that came here, bought some great, what became great properties in the early 90s, and just a very intriguing story to me. Sold a few while I was his banker. And so one day I asked him to have lunch, and he so obliged, and we had lunch, and I turned to him and said, "Hey, I'm thinking I may get out of banking. I love what you do, and I would be interested in working for you." And I said, I'll take out the trash if I need to take out the trash.
Sure, yeah, I'm willing to do anything it takes to just kind of get...
Just to learn the game. I knew who I wanted to work for. I knew what business I wanted to be in, which prior to that, I just didn't know. And at that point, he turned to me and said, "Cory, I'm not going to hire you." And I said, "Why is that? Is it my clothes? Is it what is it that I did or didn't do or know or don't know?" And he said, and it stuck with me forever. He said, "If I hire you, you'll never go do it on your own. And until you go do it on your own, you're never going to learn what you really want to do." And from that point forward, I met my business partner, and we bought. We found an investor. We didn't have any money at the time, and we bought a $50,000 single family 600 square foot house in Sunnyside, and we did some lipstick and ended up selling it, made very little money, and that one turned into a couple hundred over the next 6 years, and then eventually there were you would go down to the Denver County auction, and you couldn't find a seat at this point because everybody had heard that their brother, sister wanted to buy and sell a home because they thought it was easy money. And in the end, it was tough, but it was a great learning experience. And then we ultimately bought our first property from you, which was that 33-unit apartment building in 80205.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I got started, and we've done a few things since then, but that's my story.
So I believe in living a purpose-driven lifestyle, which always surrounds that point with the question why. Why are we doing this? What's the purpose here? Why would you be in real estate investing? And so why do you believe that multifamily property matters to a community?
Well, I think it's a twofold answer. I think what we do in particular, given where we do most of our properties, Curtis Park, San Rafael, Whittier, kind of the 80205 area. You know, the word gentrification gets thrown around a lot, but that's exactly what it is. We have the oldest neighborhood in the state, and for me, the neat thing is to go in and to rehab these beautiful old Victorians, Italianates, Denver squares, and you know, you bring new people in there. You create jobs, and bringing these people that you know, that are so close to Denver, and you know, ride their bike to Denver, take the light rail. You create businesses. So you know, Welton, Larimer, Market. There have been a bunch of new startup business, great restaurants, coffee shops. You know, you name it, and it's really there. So just being able to, you know, shine a light on a neighborhood and take it to another level.
Yeah.
And creating all those things, I think, is very important.
Yeah, I think taking that, taking what was once great and maybe has fallen on some hard times is really a key component to people who are going to be in the development business, whether you're rehabbing or building new. And I think the other theme that I hear in there is that you picked a neighborhood that you became really intimately aware of. And you said, look, this is an area that's really close to downtown, but for whatever reason is kind of a tough neighborhood. And you became one of the pioneers of helping re-gentrify that neighborhood. And that neighborhood's as hot as a firecracker now. So I mean, I think that's a kudos to you and to your development team that you saw that potential.
And I wish I could say it was our hindsight. At the time we started in the neighborhood, you know, it was, quite frankly, it was a neighborhood that was so close to Lodo that you think to yourself, how can this not be one of the next growing neighborhoods? And
but it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And actually, people called us crazy for a long time, and we still may be. Who knows? But, you know, it was the price per property that was intriguing at the time,
Sure.
with the proximity to being so close to lower downtown and everything else.
Well, and one of the things I really respect about you and your wife is that you not only invested there, but you lived there.
Yes.
And I like to say that, you know, maybe I was, you know, as a real estate broker, I'm smart and I've got, you know, these great answers to how I might find a potential buyer for a property. But the property we worked on, the first deal, the 33 unit, was just a few blocks away from your house. So
that's right.
Hey, all I said was, hey, Cory lives over here, you should go and see it, and you know, the rest is history.
Sure.
So, but I think that's really important. For people, and we every now and again as real estate brokers will get a little bit of flack for, you know, gosh, you're selling a property and everybody's getting kicked out and the neighborhood's changing and there's a lot of concern about change. But you were a pioneer and you said, I'm going to live in that market that I'm investing in. And I think that's really key to say that, hey, no, this is my neighborhood and I'm helping make it better.
Sure.
So I think that's a really important component of your story. You had talked about at the beginning of the interview that mentors were really important to you, and you mentioned your client at the bank. I have found that almost everybody I know that has experienced success has done that on the shoulders of mentors. So talk about your involvement with mentors and maybe how someone that's young and just graduated from college or wants to be in real estate, how they might find a mentor.
So yeah, I mean, like you said, I think none of us are here without mentors. You can learn basics, you can learn numbers, you can learn spreadsheets, you can do all that in school. But to really experience what you're about to do, you have to have somebody, well, not have to, but you should most likely have somebody that has done some form or fashion of what you are doing. So again, you know, one of the mentors was the reason why I got started in this business. And, you know, whether it's that guy or a banking mentor or an investor mentor, I mean, there's so many different aspects of this real estate game that I think it's very important. And yeah, I think that
on the topic of mentors, I think that something that is missed by a lot of younger generations is this desire to know everything. right when you're starting out. And I'm just as guilty of it too. I think that when you're in your early 20s, and this is not a knock on millennials, we're both millennials. So this is just a knock on being in your 20s and wanting to prove yourself. What happens is I think you're fearful at first of asking questions and feeling like you really don't know. But what happens is when you involve a mentor, someone that's been there for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and you allow them to speak into your life, you get this benefit of learning from their experiences, i.e. learning from their mistakes.
That's exactly.
And you fast track your experience by doing that. And I think that the advice that your mentor gave to you about, hey, I don't want you to come and work for me, I want you to do this on your own, probably is one of the most valuable pieces of advice you've ever gotten. And at the time you're like crushed, deflated. You're like, why don't you like me? Why don't you want to work with me? And it's like, the reality is he was paying you a great compliment that you could do it on your own, and doing you a great favor by saying you could make this happen.
Absolutely.
So we talked about Whittier and Curtis Park and San Rafael. Which Denver neighborhoods are you investing in right now, today, and why?
We are primarily and almost solely in 80205. It's hard to get away from what you know.
Sure.
And I feel like the biggest mistakes people make in this game is they buy the unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, numbers are numbers, but neighborhoods are not neighborhoods. Metro cities are not non-metro cities. So there are a lot of factors that we all have to take into account when purchasing properties. We've gone, we have properties in Capitol Hill, we have properties in North Denver, and we if the numbers make sense in going through all the unknowns and all the unforeseeable events that may happen, we have bought some properties outside of Denver. But for the most part, that's kind of our comfort zone, our sweet spot. We the neighborhood has changed a bunch. The secret is out in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we understand that. So what it is for us, because we've been there so long, people know who we are. They know the product we deliver, which is, a lot of the streets there are historic. So we have a great relationship with the Historical Society, the Landmark Preservation, and it is very important for us to be known as the group that does a great job, especially in those neighborhoods, because it's so important to us.
Yeah, and what I hear there also, and I've seen in my working with you, is that when you have experience in a neighborhood and you understand the dynamics of that neighborhood, most of the best deals out there are usually something that are going to have quite a bit of competition. It's very rare that a truly great investment is going to be just given to you right away. And so what I see is that you need to be able to make decisions quickly, and you can't do that at the beginning if you don't have experience, because you're not sure what to look for.
Sure.
And so when you're consistently investing in North Denver, you know exactly what to look for. And so if someone calls you and says, hey, look, there's a troubled asset here, it's one of your banking relationships, or someone that you just know, a broker that will call you up and say, I've got a deal in your neighborhood, you know exactly why that'll make sense.
Sure.
And I think that strength in your, kind of staying in your lane, staying in your neighborhood that you understand, it would be foolish to constantly be going outside of that core strength of yours.
Yeah, and we've been doing that neighborhood for a long time, and it was never easy. People called us crazy. They said, what are you gonna do down there? It's never gonna gentrify. It's never gonna be this place that you all think it's gonna be. And quite frankly, I wish I could say that I knew that when we started, but I didn't. And there's been a lot of changes, a lot of great things, a lot of wonderful things for the city and the neighborhood, and really the state for that matter.
Yeah, one of our prior guests, Paul Books of Palisade Development, is doing a huge development with some tax credits involved all along Welton Street. And I think that the ability to do a very large scale new construction has a lot to do with the work that you've done in the neighborhood and some of the other early pioneers. A prior guest, a buddy of ours, and a guy that we do business with, Josh Steck. Josh asked, what type of legacy do you intend to leave? And that can kind of go two ways. One, your legacy in business and kind of in the neighborhoods you work in, but then also your father. One commonality that we share is we both have twins. And pretty cool when you start to have kids, you start to think about the next generation, and you have some forward thinking. So what type of legacy do you hope to leave?
Well, it's funny. After having kids, and my kids are about a year old, you really think about what your legacy is. And I look at my father's legacy, and I look at my father's father's legacy, and what do I want to leave to my kids? Mm-hmm. And that the question is difficult to answer. Do I want to make sure my kids are financially sound? Do I want to teach them, the good and bad of a credit card and how to build credit? Of course I do. I'm not sure that is a legacy, but if I teach them to not necessarily follow my footsteps, but always do the right thing. Please, thank you, from normal basic manners to just learning the basics of life. I think that's huge for us all to teach our kids. As far as business, business is, I feel like what we're doing now is helping. It's helping the neighborhoods. It's creating jobs. It's doing all the things that we all think about. When you think about what is a legacy, I mean, we think about how do we change other people's lives? How are we remembered? And I think in business, we'll be remembered for the gentrification, for the job creation, and everything that we have done by creating these dilapidated buildings that we take to a different level and change neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think having a positive impact, whether it's in your personal life or in your business life. I mean, just life can be pretty simple if you live by the golden rule and do things to others as you would expect them to be done to you. And as a parent, it's not so much about what experiences you can give to your kids, and all that's fun, but it's really giving them some core foundational principles to say, look, if you stick to these things, you're going to do really well in life.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
I believe that all leaders are also readers, and that the people that make our world a better place intentionally educate themselves outside of high school and college education. So the question that I ask is, what business or nonfiction book have you read that's your favorite, and why?
Sure. I think books are another form of a mentor. I think books teach you things that you don't necessarily learn in school. They are coming from somebody that has experienced in the field what you're doing, and not necessarily you reading a book full of numbers that you have to break down and you have to have an end result.
Sure.
So the best mentor type book that I've read is The 4-Hour Workweek. Mm-hmm. And why I chose that book was because there's people that work. They work 12-hour days and they work 7 days a week.
There's a lot of people who work really hard.
Yes. And then, but if you ask them, I think they get majority of their work done in hours. Mm-hmm. So 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of every day is really driven to what they're doing to create the task. And for me, it's just working smarter and blocking out time from 8 to 11. You're doing spreadsheets. From 11 to 1, you're looking at properties, and from 1 to 4 or 5, you're working on new deals.
Yeah.
And I think that if you work smarter and you have a system in place, you can get all of that done in half the time, so you can enjoy time with your family and the other important things in life.
Yeah, because I think one of the bigger myths of our society is multitasking. The idea that I can do all this stuff and have a bunch of different pots on the stove here and I'm going to make it all happen. But the reality in business is the most successful people I know are focused. And they from stealing from the old term batch accounting, which you learn in business school, and my career coach, Rory Vaden, just wrote his second book called Procrastinate on Purpose, and he talks about this, where you're intentionally saying, I'm going to focus on this activity and block everything else out for right now, because that's the most important thing. And there's so many other, if you think about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you talked about Timothy Ferriss that wrote the 4-Hour Workweek. There's so many of these thought leaders that say that the key to success is really saying what's important right now, blocking out some time, being intentional, and putting that into your calendar, and then doing it every single week with repetition. And that's really the key to success, is just doing it often and being real intelligent about the way that you do that. So I have a quote that you selected, and I love this quote. The only one who can tell you can't is you, and you don't have to listen. I had mentioned Rory Vaden a moment ago. His first book was a bestseller, and it's called Take the Stairs. And Rory talks about in that book that little voice in your head or the little guy on your shoulder is called Mr. Mediocrity around his company, because that little voice never says good things to you. And I love that you picked this quote. How do you feel about the quote, or what stuck out to you in the couple of quotes that you were looking at when you picked it?
You know, that one in particular, it's nobody can tell you no but yourself.
Yeah.
And if you start to listen to the negativity surrounding you, that you can't do it or you won't do it, it goes back to the childhood saying, you can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah. And
the only person that's going to stop you is yourself. And that's with sports, that's with business, that's with friends, that's with family. If you say no, then that's the only thing that'll stop you.
I get a book for all of my guests, and I got you the book that I just read, Tribes by Seth Godin. Now, I just read it. The book's about 5 or 6 years old, and it is a classic. Seth Godin is a marketing genius. For any of you watching, if you haven't followed Seth on Twitter, he is amazing. I mean, just has amazing advice. And so, giving you the book, and this is my personal copy. So it's something that's got my notes in it, and I hope you enjoy it. It's also a quick read. As a father of twins, I realize there's not a lot of discretionary time. So, thanks so much for being a guest on our show. Thank you for everybody that's watching our show on YouTube. We really appreciate your viewership. For my guest, Cory Phillips, I'd love to say this is the show where multifamily matters, and we will see you around the neighborhood.